Hello to anybody and everybody who has found this video today. Here we're going to be talking about sort of different types of therapy someone could go through and sort of what it's like going through therapy and all the sorts of questions you might have about what it's like, what's the process, what are things I should be looking for in a therapist, those sorts of things. And to start off, we're going to look at sort of what are the different types of therapy. There's the cognitive behavioral therapy, which sort of works on a two-part level when it's working on your cognitive level, which is more or less going to be building up your self-belief and understanding sort of things will get better if you keep working at it. And then the behavioral side is working to help you learn things to help keep your life healthier and sort of building off of a positive sort of loop where you'll keep building upon things that you can do in your behavior that'll help decrease your risk of being in a severe situation with your mental illness. That sort of style of therapy works most often with depression, anxiety, and bipolar disorders, but it's not obviously limited to that. That's just the three main sort of ones that it'll work well with. The next sort of form is interpersonal therapy, which works on helping build your relationships with people and yourself, and then obviously working on expressing emotions in healthy ways that won't put you or others at risk, or keeping your emotions from becoming volatile or aggressive or something like that. This often works well with depression, as it sort of just helps build your relationships up again, which oftentimes can be brought down due to depression. And there's also another sort of form called interpersonal and social rhythm therapy, which works to help people with bipolar disorder build up a healthier way of going through a daily schedule, which will help support their recovery. The third form we have is the family therapy, which you would go in with your family and talk to a therapist as a whole, and you'd work on handling sort of problems that you have within your family or externally. And then it also helps to solve conflicts or build up your communication among family members, and it also just helps solving your problems and the sort of conflicts that may arise as a family. This form is used a lot for people with eating disorders and bipolar disorder. The fourth form we have is a psychodynamic therapy, which works on helping people understand their unconscious emotions and motives that sort of can either bring down their day or motivate their day or brighten their day. It works to help them limit the effects it has on their thoughts and emotions, or help keep it in check as they sort of go through the process and eventually recover from whatever they're suffering from. This works for a lot of different disorders or mental illnesses. Our fifth form is art therapy, which would be using music, dance, or drawing, or just any sort of visual expression to help your path to recovery, as it just helps you either show your emotions through that way or just help to express your emotions in that sort of form if you're a more creative or physical sort of expressive person. And that helps to build up sort of the understanding between you and your therapist of a way to work on figuring out your emotions and sort of what's going on inside of your head. The last specific form we're going to be talking about is psychoeducation therapy, which just sort of helps teach people who are in recovery sort of ways in which to improve their mental health, sort of understanding their mental health, and just get them further onto the road of recovery by just teaching them sort of those tricks and what it is, and understanding fully what they have to do to maintain their mental health. Sort of things to expect from therapy is that it can be short or long term. There's no real limit or constraint of time that you'll have, because it will depend and vary for every single person. And most of the sessions will be 50 minutes to an hour is what the most common time is. And it'll just be once a week, maybe even twice a week. If your situation is a bit more dangerous for you, or your therapist feels that sort of the place you're in mentally is not a safe space at all for you to sort of remain in, and you're oftentimes going to be very suicidal or attempting self-harm very often, and so that would be a need to be in there more often. Your first meeting is definitely going to be different from all of your other meetings, as it's the time for your therapist to understand sort of who you are, figure out your background, understand sort of what went on before you incurred your journey with mental illness, and sort of how to get you to be on the right path of recovery that they want to work on with you, and sort of just building up those foundation blocks for them to work with. Sometimes finding that a therapist can take just one try, but there's also very often where it'll take multiple tries to find the right fit, which is something a person should always be keeping in mind when they're going to find a therapist, is that there's a lot of different people out there, there's a lot of different methods a therapist can use, there's a lot of different things a person should be looking for in their therapist that maybe just works well for them. Some of these things could include like their gender, if they're male or female, if they're older or younger. If you're a younger person, you probably want to connect with a younger person, or if you are an older person, maybe even someone older than you would be a good fit. And then working with someone who's of your same background or has similar cultural traits that you would be able to connect with to that person and be able to share in that way that where they would understand it. Lastly, it would just be their style, if they're more formal, if they're more friendly, or if it's just more easygoing, or if it's more hard-pressing to sort of answer questions that they have versus having maybe a more free-flowing sort of just conversation where things come up and you bring that up and then you just sort of talk about it and then you just keep going on with your conversation or something like that. And those are all just things to be keeping in mind when you are looking for a therapist, as it'll often be easier for you to open up to someone you feel more comfortable with or more connected with. And that's obviously the main goal of therapy, is to recover and sort of understand what you're going to be going through and sort of what you want to get out of therapy. The ways to sort of get the most out of your experience and the ways to just make the road to recovery a lot easier and even potentially sooner would be to sort of tell your provider what you're expecting to be sort of like your finish line for your recovery, is sort of like your plans on where you want to be at the end of recovery and sort of what you want to gain throughout the time you share together, as it'll be something that'll keep you on track. It'll be sort of like your timeline that you will follow as a group, and it'll just be something that you can always be keeping track of. The next would be to have an open mind, as there's oftentimes a therapist will challenge you to think sort of different ways or behave in different ways in different scenarios that might be different to how you would react normally. And it's just them trying to help you get a better understanding of things that you might be doing in a certain scenario that they feel you should be doing in a different way to sort of help you recover faster or help you break down maybe a constraint that your mental illness has put up in front of you that you sort of are stuck in trying to get around or something like that. If you think you're not making progress, always do tell your therapist, as they will often ask for like certain scenarios where it isn't working, or figure out ways in which maybe they can change their style or change sort of how they're presenting information to you, and then work alongside you to help progress. Otherwise, and then it's like you're not gaining anything and your therapist isn't doing this stuff that will work for you. So it's just going to be a long, dragged out process where nothing's really going to be getting accomplished, and it might even start to go back and slip into being worse than it was. And so you just want to be telling the person you're working with if it is not genuinely work. And oftentimes, if it doesn't work out in the end, they will often recommend just finding a new therapist. It's not something personal, it's just something more or less that this wasn't the fit for you. So there's always like times to be open and honest, because this is going to be the most comfortable way and most fluid way to get all your information out there. And this is one of those times when you want to be open and honest, because you want the most out of this experience. You want to be and always making your life a bit easier for you and a bit better mentally, just because then it'll make everything just sort of become less of a issue and more of just something you can deal with and manage on your own. Another thing with being open and honest is that you don't want to hide information or keep information to yourself from your therapist if it would be something that they could use to help you, or that's something that they can obviously do for you by understanding more of what you're going through, that it'll just give them more of that window and perspective that they need inside of what you're thinking, because they're not you and they're not going to be fully understanding unless you give them more of a full picture. And the last thing would be to take therapy home, either by writing a journal or keeping a log, or just something where you are expressing your emotions that you can bring into therapy, or it's just expressing your emotions and your thoughts just on paper or online, a Google Doc or something like that, where it would just be out there. It's you venting, or it's you expressing your feelings in that moment, and then you can take it into therapy, or you can just use that as a therapeutic sort of method method at home. And that's where we're going to be leaving the video here today. Hopefully you have learned something. You can take this information into your own life, and hopefully you get a better understanding of sort of what therapy is and the different methods you can go into, and just sort of what it is and how to obviously get the most and the quickest recovery you can. And I will see you all in the next video. Thank you.